The stars were burning. That was the first thought that came to Admiral Lisa Monroe as she watched the tactical display on the bridge of her starship, the Defiance. But stars do not burn like that. What she saw were human colonies dying. One by one, the lights on her screen flickered and went dark. Each light was a world. Each world held millions of people. And now they were gone. The Krethvari had come without warning 3 years ago. 7 alien species had joined together for one simple reason. They wanted to destroy humanity. Not defeat. Not conquer. Destroy. Every man, woman, and child. Every city, every ship, every trace that humans had ever existed among the stars. Lisa gripped the railing in front of her command chair. Her knuckles turned white. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. They all knew the truth. They were losing. Not just this battle. The entire War. Commander Jake Harris walked up to stand beside her. He was a tall man with tired eyes. He had not slept properly in weeks. None of them had. "Admiral," he said quietly, "we just lost contact with the outer colonies. Earth Command sent a message 20 minutes ago." Lisa did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the screen. "What did they say?" Jake hesitated. The words seemed to stick in his throat. "They estimate complete human extinction within 72 hours. At current losses, we cannot survive." The words hung in the air like poison. Lisa had known this was coming. She had felt it in her bones for months now. But hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a way she had not been prepared for. On the screen, the enemy fleet moved closer. Hundreds of warships. Thousands of fighters. The Krethvari coalition had more ships than humanity had people left to crew them. The Defiance and her 11 sister ships were all that remained of the human navy. 12 vessels against an armada that darkened the stars. Why? Lisa whispered. It was not really a question. She had asked it many times before. Why do they hate us so much? Jake had heard this question before too. He gave the same answer he always did. Because they fear what we might become. Their scientists ran projections, simulations. They saw that in another 100 years, humanity would surpass all of them. Our technology, our population, our expansion. We were growing too fast, learning too quickly. So they decided to kill us before we could become a threat. Yes, Admiral. Lisa finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and something else. Something that looked like the last spark of hope refusing to die. Jake, do you remember the stories about the old wars? The ones on Earth before we reached the stars? He nodded slowly. Some of them? Why? There were always moments in those wars when everything seemed lost. When the enemy was at the gates and defeat was certain. And then something would change. Some weapon. Some hero. Some desperate gamble that nobody thought would work. Jake studied her face. Admiral, what are you thinking? Lisa turned back to her console. Her fingers moved across the controls, entering codes that had been sealed for over 200 years. Codes that required the highest level of clearance. Codes that came with warnings and restrictions and promises that they would never be used except in the most extreme circumstances. I am thinking about a file, she said. A classified file that my grandmother told me about when I was a little girl. She was an admiral too, you know? She said that humanity had a secret. A weapon so powerful and so dangerous that they locked it away and tried to forget it existed. The screen in front of her changed. A new file appeared. The words at the top read, Project Lazarus. Classification, Omega Black. Authorization, End of Species Protocol only. Jake leaned forward to read the screen. His face went pale. Lisa, he whispered, forgetting her rank in his shock. This cannot be real. It is real. I confirmed it with Earth Command 6 months ago, when I first realized we might actually lose this war. The file contained information about a facility on Luna Base 7, a cryogenic storage complex that had been sealed and forgotten for over 200 years. Inside that facility was a single chamber. Inside that chamber was a single man. His name was Daniel Cole. He had been born in 2089. He had enlisted in the military in 2107, and in 2112, he had been selected for something called the Prometheus Initiative. The details of the program were horrifying and fascinating in equal measure. Genetic enhancement, cybernetic integration, neural optimization. They had taken a normal human soldier and transformed him into something else, something more, something perfect. And then they had used him. 3 wars. That was what the records showed. 3 wars that should have lasted decades. 3 conflicts that military experts said would cost millions of lives and consume entire generations. Daniel Cole had ended each of them in weeks, sometimes days. His methods were efficient beyond anything the world had ever seen. He moved through battlefields like a ghost. He dismantled enemy command structures like a surgeon removing a tumor. He turned certain defeat into absolute victory with a speed that terrified everyone who witnessed it. But he never harmed civilians, never killed the innocent. Every death he caused was precise and purposeful. He was not a monster. He was something far more dangerous. He was a monster with a conscience, and that was why they had sealed him away. The governments of Earth had looked at Daniel Cole and seen their own futures written in his cold gray eyes. Today he ended wars against foreign enemies. Tomorrow he might decide that those same governments were the true threat to peace. He was too powerful to control, too effective to destroy. So they did the only thing they could. They put him to sleep and hoped humanity would never need to wake him up. Lisa looked at the file for a long moment. She thought about what she was considering. She thought about the millions of people still alive, the children on the colonies that had not yet fallen, the families huddled in shelters, praying for a miracle. "Send a team to Luna Base 7, she said. Her voice was steady now. The decision had been made. Wake him up. Jake swallowed hard. "Admiral, are you sure?" "The warning's in this file." "I am sure of one thing, Commander." Lisa turned to face him, and something ancient and fierce burned in her eyes. "We are about to die. All of us. Every human being in the universe. And I would rather unleash a monster that fights for us than let our children be slaughtered by monsters that do not." She looked back at the screen, where the enemy fleet continued its approach. "Wake him up, and pray he remembers which side he is on." Luna Base 7 had been abandoned for 217 years. The corridors were dark and cold. Dust covered every surface like a gray blanket. The air recyclers had stopped working decades ago, and the emergency team had to wear breathing masks as they made their way through the facility. Dr. Kevin Price led the group. He was a small man with nervous hands and eyes that never stopped moving. He had spent his entire career studying old military records. He knew more about humanity's forgotten history than almost anyone alive. And he had never been more frightened in his life. Behind him walked Lieutenant Amy Grant and a squad of 6 soldiers. They carried weapons and flashlights. Their boots left tracks in the dust. No one had walked these halls in longer than any of them had been alive. "The chamber should be at the end of this corridor," Kevin said. His voice sounded strange and muffled through his mask. According to the records, they built it in the deepest part of the base. Maximum security. Maximum isolation. Amy moved up beside him. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and a face that would have been pretty if it was not so tense with worry. "Doctor, I read the briefing files on the shuttle right here. Are you sure we should be doing this? Kevin did not answer right away. He kept walking, his flashlight cutting through the darkness ahead. Lieutenant, do you know why I became a historian? No, sir. Because I wanted to understand where we came from. What made us who we are? I have spent 40 years reading about human history. The wars, the discoveries, the triumphs and the failures. And in all that time, I have never found anything like Daniel Cole. They reached a massive door at the end of the corridor. It was made of metal so thick that their lights barely reflected off its surface. Words were written across the top. Omega-1 containment. Authorized personnel only. Lethal force protocols active. Kevin entered the codes that Admiral Monroe had given him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding sound that echoed through the empty base, the door began to open. The chamber beyond was small, maybe 20 feet across. In the center stood a single cryogenic pod. It was connected to a power supply that had somehow kept running for over 2 centuries. Frost covered the glass window on top. Kevin walked forward slowly. He reached out and wiped away the frost with his gloved hand. A face appeared beneath the glass. A man's face. He looked young, maybe 30 years old. His features were handsome in a way that seemed almost too perfect. His skin was pale from centuries of frozen sleep. His eyes were closed. Daniel Cole, Kevin whispered. Born August 14th, 2089. Enlisted March 3rd, 2107. Selected for the Prometheus Initiative on June 17th, 2112. Amy came to stand beside him. She looked down at the sleeping man with a mixture of fear and fascination. The file said they made him perfect. What does that mean, exactly? Kevin pulled up his datapad and began reading. Genetic enhancement gave him strength and speed far beyond normal human limits. His bones were reinforced with carbon fiber. His muscles were restructured at the cellular level. He can run faster than any animal on Earth. He can lift weights that would crush a normal man. That does not sound so different from some of our current soldiers. That was just the beginning. Kevin scrolled through the records. Cybernetic integration connected his nervous system to a computer network implanted throughout his body. He can process information thousands of times faster than a normal brain. He can interface directly with any electronic system. He can see in the dark, hear sounds from miles away, feel changes in air pressure that would let him sense someone approaching from behind. Amy took a step back from the pod. And the neural optimization? Kevin's voice dropped even lower. They rewired his brain, removed fear, eliminated hesitation, enhanced his pattern recognition and tactical analysis to levels that our best military computers still cannot match. He can look at a battlefield and see every possible outcome in seconds. He knows what his enemies will do before they know themselves. The soldiers behind them shifted nervously. One of them, a young man named Pete, spoke up. Sir, how did he end those wars so fast? The briefing just said he was efficient, but it did not explain how. Kevin turned to look at the young soldier, because efficiency does not capture what he did. In the Third Pacific Conflict, he infiltrated the enemy command structure and eliminated every senior officer in a single night. In the European crisis, he hacked their entire communication network and turned their own weapons against them. In the Antarctic War, he walked into the enemy capital alone and convinced their government to surrender by demonstrating exactly what would happen if they did not. Pete swallowed hard. He threatened them? No. He showed them simulations, projections of what he would do to their military forces if they continued fighting. He showed them their own defeat in such perfect detail that they realized resistance was meaningless. They surrendered within an hour. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Kevin moved to the control panel beside the cryogenic pod. His fingers hesitated over the buttons. "Admiral Monroe gave the order," he said quietly. "Humanity is facing extinction. We have no other options." He pressed the activation sequence. The pod began to hum. Ice cracked and fell away from the glass. Lights flickered to life on the monitoring screens. Vital signs appeared, showing a heartbeat that grew stronger with each passing second. And then the eyes opened. They were gray, cold and clear like winter ice. They did not blink or look around in confusion. They simply opened and focused immediately on Kevin's face with an intensity that made the doctor want to run. The glass lid of the pod slid open. Daniel Cole sat up slowly. His movements were smooth and controlled. There was no stiffness from 2 centuries of sleep. No disorientation. He looked exactly like a man who had just woken up from a brief nap. "Status report," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "Current date. Current conflict. Current enemy disposition." Kevin found that his mouth had gone dry. He had to try twice before he could speak. "The year is 2332. Humanity is at war with an alien coalition called the Krethvari. They've nearly destroyed us. We have maybe 72 hours before complete extinction." Daniel turned his head slowly, taking in the chamber, the soldiers, the ancient equipment. His gray eyes seemed to catalog everything in an instant. "Aliens," he said. It was not a question. Humanity made contact with extraterrestrial life. Yes, about 150 years ago. And now they are trying to kill us. Yes. Daniel swung his legs over the side of the pod and stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet, with a lean and powerful build. He moved like water flowing over rocks. Smooth, effortless, dangerous. "Take me to whoever is in command," he said. "I need to see everything. Maps, reports, enemy capabilities, fleet positions. All of it." Amy stepped forward, her hand unconsciously moving toward her weapon. "And then what?" Daniel Cole looked at her. For just a moment, something flickered in those cold gray eyes. Something that might have been sadness. Or maybe it was just a memory of all the wars he had fought before. "And then I end it," he said simply. "That is what I do." He walked past them toward the door, leaving footprints in the dust that had gathered over 200 years of silence. The weapon had awakened, and the universe was about to learn why humanity should never have been underestimated. The war room of the Defiance was the largest compartment on the ship. Holographic displays covered every wall. Tactical data streamed across dozens of screens. Officers rushed back and forth, coordinating the desperate defense of humanity's last strongholds. And in the center of it all stood Daniel Cole. He had been there for exactly 4 minutes. In that time, he had absorbed 3 years of war reports. Casualty figures, battle records, intelligence assessments, enemy strength estimates. He had read through thousands of pages of information at a speed that made the officers around him stare in disbelief. Admiral Lisa Monroe watched him from across the room. She had expected many things when she gave the order to wake him. She had expected a warrior, a weapon, a relic from a darker time in human history. What she had not expected was how quiet he would be. Daniel did not speak while he worked. He did not ask questions. He simply stood there, his gray eyes moving across the data streams, his enhanced mind processing information faster than any computer on the ship. Commander Jake Harris leaned close to Lisa and whispered, "Admiral, he has been reading for 4 minutes straight. No breaks, no pauses. Is that normal?" "Nothing about him is normal, Commander. That is the point." Daniel suddenly stopped, his eyes fixed on a particular display showing the enemy fleet composition. He tilted his head slightly, like a predator hearing something interesting in the distance. 7 species, he said. His voice cut through the noise of the war room like a blade. Everyone fell silent. The Krethvari Coalition consists of 7 distinct alien species. Unified command structure under a joint leadership council. Primary flagship designated the Dominion. Current fleet strength, approximately 4,000 combat vessels. Estimated ground forces across all occupied territories, 2 billion soldiers. He turned to face Admiral Monroe. His expression was completely neutral. No fear, no doubt, no emotion at all. Your current defensive assets, 12 capital ships, approximately 400 fighters, and roughly 50,000 combat personnel. You are outnumbered in ships by a factor of 300 to 1. You are outnumbered in soldiers by a factor of 40,000 to 1. Jake made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. When you put it that way, it sounds even worse than I thought. Daniel ignored him. He kept his eyes on Lisa. Admiral, before I proceed, I need you to understand something. I need you to understand exactly what you have awakened. Lisa straightened her spine. She was not going to show fear. Not now, not in front of her crew. I read your file, Mr. Cole. I know what you are. No, you read what they wrote about me. That is not the same thing. Daniel took a step toward her. He moved so smoothly that it was almost impossible to track. One moment, he was 10 feet away. The next moment, he was standing right in front of her. They sealed me away because I was too effective. Do you know what that means? Lisa held her ground. It means you end wars. No, Admiral. It means I remove the capacity for war. There's a difference. He turned back to the holographic display and made a gesture. The image zoomed in on the enemy flagship. When I am finished with the Krethvari Coalition, they will not simply lose this war. They will cease to function as a military threat for the next 1,000 years. Their alliance will shatter. Their military infrastructure will collapse. Their ability to wage organized conflict will be fundamentally destroyed. A young officer near the back of the room spoke up. Her name was Susan, and she had been monitoring communications. Excuse me, but how? How can one person do that? Even if you are enhanced, even if you are everything the old files say you are still just one man against an entire armada. Daniel turned to look at her. For a moment, his gray eyes softened just slightly. She reminded him of someone from a very long time ago. Do you know what humanity's greatest strength is? He asked. Susan shook her head. It is not our technology. It is not our numbers. It is not even our determination, although that comes close. Daniel walked toward the main tactical display. He touched it, and new data began to appear. Information that had not been in any of the official reports. Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to learn from violence. Every war we have ever fought has taught us something. Every conflict has made us better at ending the next one. The display showed historical records now. Ancient battles. Modern wars. Strategies and tactics spanning thousands of years of human history. When they built me, Daniel continued, they did not just enhance my body and my mind. They gave me access to every military engagement in human history. Every victory. Every defeat. Every lesson learned in blood and fire. I carry all of that knowledge with me. I can see patterns that would take normal strategists years to recognize. I can predict enemy movements based on psychological profiles that I build in seconds. I can find weaknesses in any defense, any alliance, any military structure. He turned back to face the room. Every officer was staring at him now. Some with fear. Some with something that looked almost like hope. The Krethvari Coalition has a weakness, Daniel said. Every alliance does. They are united by fear of humanity. But underneath that fear, they hate each other. Each species wants to be the dominant power once we are gone. They have already made secret agreements to betray their allies after the war ends. Jake stepped forward. How do you know that? Our intelligence division has been trying to crack their communications for years, because it is inevitable. Daniel pulled up a new display showing the 7 species of the coalition. 7 different species with 7 different cultures. 7 different histories of conflict with each other. The only thing holding them together is their shared enemy. Remove that enemy, or better yet, make them fear each other more than they fear us, and the alliance crumbles. Lisa felt something stir in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope, real hope, for the first time in months. What do you need? She asked. What resources? What support? Daniel was quiet for a moment. He looked at the tactical display, at the vast enemy fleet, at the tiny cluster of human ships that represented everything left of their species. I need a shuttle, he said finally. Small, fast, unimportant enough that the enemy will not waste time trying to destroy it. I need a comlink capable of broadcasting on all Krethvari frequencies. And I need exactly 11 minutes. Jake blinked. 11 minutes? That is very specific. Everything I do is specific, Commander. Daniel turned to face them all. I will board the enemy flagship alone. I will reach their leadership council. And I will end this war before any of them understand what is happening. That is suicide? Susan said from the back of the room. Her voice was shaking. Their flagship has thousands of soldiers, security systems, elite guards. You cannot possibly. I can. Daniel's voice was flat, final. There was no room for argument in those 2 words. I have done it before, many times, against enemies who were just as certain of their superiority. He walked toward the door of the war room. Every officer moved out of his way without thinking. There was something about him that demanded space, respect. Fear dot at the door. He stopped and looked back at Admiral Monroe. One more thing, he said. When I begin, you will see things on your tactical displays. Things that may disturb you. Things that may make you question whether you made the right choice by waking me. What kind of things? Daniel's gray eyes were cold and distant. The kind of things that made them seal me away in the first place. The kind of things that ended 3 wars in my lifetime. The kind of things that humanity built me to do. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was almost gentle. Look away if you need to, but do not try to stop me, and do not feel guilty afterward. This is what I was made for. This is who I am. He walked out of the war room, leaving behind a silence so deep that the officers could hear their own heartbeats. Lisa. Monroe stared at the closed door for a long moment. Then she turned to her crew. You heard him, she said quietly. Get him a shuttle. Get him a comlink. And pray that whatever he's about to do, it works. Because if it did not, there would be no one left to pray for anything ever again. The shuttle was small and old. It had no weapons, no shields worth mentioning, no special equipment of any kind. It was exactly what Daniel had asked for, something so unimportant that the enemy would ignore it. Daniel sat alone in the pilot's seat as the tiny vessel launched from the Defiance. Around him, the battle raged. Human ships fought desperately against the endless swarm of enemy vessels. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like dying stars. On any other day, a shuttle like this would have been destroyed in seconds, but Daniel had calculated his trajectory perfectly. He threaded through the chaos like a needle through cloth. Enemy fighters passed within meters of his hull and never even noticed him. Their sensors were focused on bigger targets, more important threats. They had no idea that the most dangerous thing in the universe was flying right past them in a ship that looked like garbage. Minute 1 began when Daniel activated his comlink. and broadcast a single data packet on all HFY frequencies. The packet was not large. It contained information that he had compiled in the war room, intelligence that human spies had gathered over 3 years of conflict. Combined with analysis that only his enhanced mind could perform, the packet contained evidence of betrayal, every secret agreement that each species had made with the others, every plan to stab their allies in the back once humanity was destroyed, every private communication where coalition leaders had laughed about how they would divide the spoils and eliminate their so-called friends. Daniel had not obtained this information from stolen files. He had deduced it. He had looked at the structure of the alliance, analyzed the history of each species, studied the personalities of their leaders, and simply calculated what they must have agreed to in private. His predictions were so accurate that they might as well have been recordings of actual conversations. The effect was immediate. On the bridge of the Dominion, alarms began to sound. Communications channels exploded with accusations. Species that had been fighting side by side moments ago suddenly turned suspicious eyes on each other. Some ships stopped firing at humans entirely. Others began repositioning, moving away from vessels they no longer trusted. The alliance was cracking, and Daniel had not even reached the flagship yet. Minute 3. His shuttle approached the Dominion from below, using the massive ship's own bulk to hide from its sensors. He found what he was looking for, an exhaust port, a small opening used to vent waste heat from the reactor core. It was barely large enough for a human to fit through. It was certainly too small for any of the coalition species to consider as a security risk. They had not built their defenses with humans in mind. That was their first mistake. Daniel sealed his suit, opened the shuttle's hatch, and launched himself into space. He crossed the gap between his shuttle and the flagship in seconds, his enhanced body ignoring the cold and vacuum that would have killed a normal human. He slipped into the exhaust port and began climbing. The interior of the ship was hot and cramped. Pipes and cables surrounded him. The sound of the reactor hummed through the walls. Any normal person would have become lost immediately in this maze of machinery. Daniel did not get lost. He had memorized the general design of HFY vessels from the intelligence files. His enhanced senses detected air currents, electrical signals, and vibrations that told him exactly where he was and where he needed to go. He moved through the ship's guts like a ghost. Minute 5. He emerged from a maintenance hatch into a service corridor. 2 alien guards stood nearby, their backs to him. They were Vrethkai, one of the 7 coalition species. Tall, insectoid creatures with 4 arms and armored exoskeletons that could stop most conventional weapons. They did not stop Daniel. He moved so fast that human eyes would not have been able to follow. One moment he was behind them. The next moment they were on the ground, their neural systems disrupted by precisely applied pressure to points that their own doctors did not know existed. They were not dead. He did not need to kill them. He just needed them to sleep. Daniel continued forward. More guards appeared. More guards fell. He flowed through the ship like water through a broken dam. Nothing could stop him. Nothing could slow him down. The security systems tried to track him. Cameras caught glimpses of movement. Sensors detected anomalies. But by the time the alarms reached the central command, Daniel was already somewhere else. He was always somewhere else. Minute 6. He reached the central command nexus, the heart of the flagship, the place where the Coalition Leadership Council directed the entire war against humanity. The doors were sealed. 47 elite guards stood in the corridor outside. They were the best soldiers from all 7 species, hand-picked warriors who had proven themselves in countless battles. They carried weapons designed to kill anything that lived. They saw Daniel standing at the end of the corridor, a single human, unarmored, completely alone. The guard captain, A massive creature covered in scales and spines made a sound that might have been laughter. He raised his weapon and gave the order to fire. What happened next would become legend among the Coalition species. Stories would be told for generations. Nightmares would be born that would last for centuries. Daniel moved. He did not dodge the weapon's fire. He was simply not where the shots went. He flowed between the energy beams like they were standing still. He reached the first guard before anyone could react and touched him once, twice, 3 times. The guard collapsed. Then Daniel reached the second guard. And the third. And the fourth. The corridor became a blur of motion. Guards fired wildly, hitting nothing but walls and each other. Daniel was everywhere and nowhere. He struck with hands and feet and elbows and knees. He used pressure points that paralyzed. He used leverage that threw enemies twice his size into walls. He used speed that made him invisible. 30 seconds. That was all it took. 47 elite warriors lay on the ground. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. None of them were dead. Daniel stood before the sealed doors, not even breathing hard. He placed his hand on the lock mechanism. His cybernetic systems interfaced with the alien technology in seconds. The doors slid open. The Leadership Council of the Krethvari Coalition sat in a circular chamber beyond. 7 beings. 7 species. The most powerful individuals in an alliance that had nearly destroyed humanity. They stared at Daniel Cole with expressions of pure terror. "You have 2 options," Daniel said calmly. He walked into the chamber. His boots left no sound on the metal floor. "I will explain both of them clearly, and then you will choose." The supreme commander of the coalition was named Vethkai. He was the largest being in the room, an insectoid creature that towered over Daniel by several feet. His position made him responsible for the war. His pride made him speak first. "You are one human," Vethkai said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "You cannot threaten us. Our guards will recover. Our ships will destroy your pathetic fleet. You have accomplished nothing." Daniel looked at him. Just looked. There was something in those gray eyes that made Vethkai fall silent. "Option 1, Daniel said. "I kill everyone in this room. Then I access your command systems and send false orders to your fleet. I turn your ships against each other. I use the secrets I have already broadcast to accelerate the collapse of your alliance. Within 72 hours, your military infrastructure across every world you control will be destroyed. I estimate the total death toll at approximately 800 million. The council members exchanged horrified glances. One of them, a smaller creature with blue skin, whispered something in its own language. "Option 2, Daniel continued. "Unconditional surrender. Complete withdrawal from human space. Reparations for every colony you have destroyed. And a binding agreement that you will never threaten humanity again." Vethkai rose from his seat. He towered over Daniel, his mandibles clicking with rage. "You cannot enforce such terms. You are one creature. We have billions of soldiers. Thousands of ships. You are nothing but—" Daniel moved. It was barely visible. A blur of motion that ended with his hand wrapped around Vethkai's throat. He lifted the massive insectoid off the ground as if it weighed nothing. The Supreme Commander's legs kicked uselessly in the air. "I am exactly what you feared we would become," Daniel said quietly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I am the reason you attacked humanity. I am the proof that you should have left us alone." He held Vethkai there for a long moment. The other council members did not move, did not speak, did not breathe. Then Daniel released him. Vethkai collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. "Choose," Daniel said. "You have 30 seconds." The council chose. Minute 11. The surrender signal broadcast across all frequencies. Every coalition ship received the order. Every fleet commander heard the words of their leaders, speaking in voices that shook with fear. The war was over. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Lisa Monroe watched the enemy fleet begin to withdraw. Ships that had been firing moments ago powered down their weapons. Vessels that had been advancing turned away. Jake Harris stood beside her, his face pale with shock. Admiral, what did he do? How did one man? Lisa shook her head slowly. She did not have words for what she had just witnessed. None of them did. He did what they built him to do, she said finally. He ended it. 3 months had passed since the end of the war. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. How had one human, one single person, defeated an alliance of 7 species that had nearly conquered known space? The story spread from world to world, growing stranger and more exaggerated with each telling. Some said Daniel Cole was not human at all. Some said he was a demon from ancient Earth legends. Others claimed he was a god who had taken human form to punish the enemies of his people. The truth was simpler and somehow more terrifying. He was human. Just human. Everything that humanity had learned about war and violence and survival, compressed into a single point. A weapon made of flesh and blood and centuries of hard lessons. Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the colony, world of New Eden. This had been one of the first places the Krethvari had attacked. 3 years ago, the city below had been rubble and ash. The streets had been filled with the bodies of the dead. The sky had been black with smoke from burning buildings. Now the city was rebuilding. Construction machines moved through the streets. New buildings rose where old ones had fallen. People walked on sidewalks that had been cleared of debris. Children played in parks that had been battlefields. Daniel watched them. The children, especially. They ran and laughed and chased each other, completely unaware of how close they had come to never existing at all. They did not know about the war. They did not know about the terror and the death and the desperate final hours before the surrender. They were innocent. And because of what Daniel had done, they would have a chance to stay that way. The door behind him opened. He did not turn around. He already knew who it was. His enhanced senses had tracked Admiral Lisa Monroe from the moment she entered the building. I thought I would find you here, Lisa said. She walked forward to stand beside him at the railing. Her uniform was clean and pressed, but there were dark circles under her eyes. The past 3 months had been almost as exhausting as the war itself. Negotiations, treaties, reparations, the endless work of building peace from the ashes of conflict. The council met this morning, she continued. They have made a decision about you. Daniel nodded slowly. He had expected this. They want to put me back in cryogenic sleep. Yes, they are afraid. Lisa paused. To be honest, I think everyone is afraid. What you did, what you are, it changes things. It changes how people think about humanity, about what we are capable of. They should be afraid. Daniel's voice was quiet. He kept his eyes on the city below. I have been afraid of myself for a very long time. Lisa turned to look at him. She studied his profile in the afternoon light. He looked so ordinary, so human. It was hard to believe that this was the same person who had walked through an army of elite warriors like they were children playing at war. I convinced them to wait, she said. I told them you had earned the right to make your own choice about whether to sleep again or try something else. Something else? Lisa shrugged. Live, maybe? Find a place in this new peace you created. We could use someone like you. Not as a weapon, as a person, an advisor, a teacher, someone who understands conflict well enough to help us avoid it. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Below, a little girl was running through the park, chasing a ball that had gotten away from her. She was laughing. The sound drifted up to the balcony like music. "Do you know why I never killed civilians?" Daniel asked suddenly. "In all the wars I fought, all the enemies I faced, I never once harmed an innocent person." Lisa shook her head. "The file said it was part of your programming, part of what they built into you." "No." Daniel finally turned to look at her. His gray eyes were different now, softer, more human. "It was a choice. Every time. They gave me the ability to be the perfect killing machine, but they could not take away my ability to choose what kind of killing machine I would be." He looked back at the city, at the children, at the people rebuilding their lives. "I remember everything," he said. "Every person I have hurt, every war one have ended. Even in cryogenic sleep, I remembered. The faces, the sounds, the weight of what I had done. 300 years of memories, and I carry all of them. That sounds like torture." "It is. It is. And it is also the only thing that keeps me human." Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "If I ever forgot what violence costs, I would become exactly what they feared. A monster without conscience. A weapon without purpose." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the war ended. "If you had to do it again, would you? Everything you did on the Dominion, the guards you defeated, the council you terrorized, would you do it again?" Daniel considered the question carefully. Below, the little girl had caught her ball. She was hugging it to her chest and running back to her mother, her face bright with joy. "I would do it 1,000 times, he said. "Because of her. Because of all of them. Every child who will grow up free because of what I did. Every family that will stay together. Every dream that will come true because humanity survived." He paused. "That is why I was built. Not to kill, not to destroy, but to make sure that there would be a tomorrow. That is enough. That has to be enough." Lisa reached out and touched his arm. It was a simple gesture, human, kind. Daniel flinched slightly, then relaxed. It had been a very long time since anyone had touched him without fear. "What will you choose?" she asked. "Sleep or life?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. The sun was setting over New Eden, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The construction machines were shutting down for the day. People were heading home to their families, to warm meals and soft beds and the simple pleasures of peace. "I will go back to sleep," he said finally. "Not because I want to, but because I do not trust myself to stay awake." Lisa nodded slowly. She had expected this answer. "The council will be relieved. I have a condition. Name it." Daniel turned to face her fully. His gray eyes were steady, certain. "Do not wake me unless humanity truly needs me. Not for politics. Not for power. Not for small conflicts that could be solved with diplomacy and patience. Only when everything else has failed. Only when there is no other choice." Lisa met his gaze. She saw the weight of centuries in those eyes. The burden of being a weapon that wanted to be human. The loneliness of knowing that you were built for a purpose that no one else could fulfill. "I promise," she said. "We will not wake you unless there is no other way." Daniel nodded. Something in his expression shifted. For just a moment, he looked almost peaceful. "And if that day never comes?" Lisa asked. "If humanity finds a way to live in peace forever? If we never need you again?" Daniel Cole looked at the sunset. The colors were fading now, giving way to the soft purple of twilight. Stars were beginning to appear in the sky above. Somewhere out there, the former enemies of humanity were learning to fear the night. Learning to tell stories about the human who had ended a war in 11 minutes. But down here, on this balcony, there was just a man who was very tired. A man who had fought too many battles and carried too many memories. A man who wanted nothing more than rest. He smiled. A real smile this time. Not the cold, efficient expression he had shown in the war room, but something warm and genuine and human. "Then I will finally get some sleep," he said. "Real sleep. The kind without nightmares. The kind where you close your eyes and there is nothing but peace." Lisa smiled back. "That sounds nice." "It does," Daniel agreed. "It really does." He looked at the city one more time, at the lights coming on in windows, at the families gathering for dinner, at the world he had saved and would probably never see again. Then he turned and walked back inside, back toward the future he had chosen, back toward the long sleep that waited for him. Behind him, the stars came out one by one, and the galaxy turned slowly through the endless night. Somewhere in that darkness, other species watched humanity and wondered. They wondered what kind of people could create something like Daniel Cole. They wondered what else humanity might be capable of. They wondered. And they were afraid. But down on New Eden, the children slept peacefully in their beds. They dreamed of adventure and happiness and all the years that stretched out before them. They did not know about the man who had saved them. They did not know about the wars of the past or the dangers of the future. They only knew that tomorrow would come. And that was enough. That was everything.